Good morning, everyone. I'm Liz Krueger, State Senator from the 28th District. Welcome to Session 4 of this year's Boomer Senior Roundtable Series. The topic today is This is Living, the Age-Friendly Home. And we had about 500 people RSVP, and so as I suspected, this was going to be a very relevant discussion for us all today. I want to remind everybody that you are either watching on Zoom or Facebook or calling in, but it's part of a 7-part series which is focusing on some of the issues we need to address to age in place. Future roundtables will focus on solo agers, technology, and Medicaid planning. So I hope you can join us again for one or more of the roundtables in this series. As always, we have closed captioning of today's event, and as a viewer, you have to activate closed captioning to view the text on your device. If you're in Zoom, click on Live Transcript in the meeting controls to start viewing closed captioning. If you're on Facebook Live, you will see a setting button in the bottom right-hand corner of the video. Click Closed Caption CC to start viewing closed captioning. This forum, like all our forums, is being recorded, and everyone who RSVP'd will receive an email with a link to the event, video, and all the resources that are posted in the chat within a few days, along with the presenters' PowerPoints. Before we go to the program, just a couple of COVID updates. The city is continuing to distribute free at-home rapid test kits at designated locations. 1 kit is available per person. A link to the list of Manhattan distribution locations and times is being posted in the chat. The city has also announced that individuals who get their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine or a booster shot at a specific vaccine site before the end of February will be eligible for a $100 incentive. February 28th is the last day these incentives will be offered. All right, if you've been participating in any of my events or talking to myself or my office for the last year and a half, you already know you should have completed 3 doses, your first 2 plus a booster. So if for some reason you were visiting another planet until now and you still haven't gotten any of your vaccines, please, please, please go get that first dose or booster shot. Take advantage of the incentive. More importantly, remember that you're protecting not just yourself, but everyone else you come in contact with. And now we will move to today's event. This morning, our presenters will offer us information about making our homes more age-friendly. And you know what? That's relevant at all ages, even though we're talking about a certain age category. First, we will hear from Brian Pape, who is on the Design for Aging Committee of the New York City chapter of the American Institute of Architects. Brian will provide an overview of some of the key issues to think about when you are assessing if your apartment is age-friendly. Next, we will hear from the Department for the Aging, multiple presenters from DFTA, including Eileen Merlarkey, who is the Assistant Commissioner at the Bureau of Social Services, Laudrey Lamadou, who is the Senior Director of Senior Services, and Ignacio Silvestre, who is the Director of the Assigned Counsel Project. They will cover a range of programs, including the department's Friendly Visiting Program, Case Management, and the Assigned Counsel Program, which offers social service supports for people in housing court. Finally, we will hear from Anna Martinez, who is the Director of Project Equal Access at the New York City Department of Human Rights. Anna provided information about your landlord's Anna will provide information about your landlord's responsibility to make reasonable accommodations to make your apartment more accessible. Just to remind you before we start, we will have a Q&A session after the presentations, and you can submit questions through the Q&A functions on Zoom and Facebook. Unfortunately, I have to leave this Zoom meeting to attend another one. It's budget season in Albany, and I'm zooming around quite a bit. but I will leave you in the excellent hands of Brad Usher, my chief of staff, who will MC the rest of the event and moderate the Q&A portion of the roundtable. As always, I couldn't do any of this without my tremendous staff, with Wendy Brennan taking the lead on all my senior programming. With that, I would like to hand it over to Brian Pape to start us off. Hi, Brian.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. And I'm glad that so many people have made it. And thank you, Senator Krueger, for sponsoring this event. There's a lot of information to cover. And I represent the Architects Committee for Design for Aging. And this is a group that actually is a mixture. The membership has members from the entire industry that deals with elderly and living conditions. So we have various folks who work with elderly population, as well as designers of various types and architects. So it's a real mixed group. And what we are doing is focusing on the trends and problem solving in our monthly meetings and with our public events open to the public for nominal cost. And most of them have been on Zoom recently and for the near future. So you could always go to AIA New York, AIANY.org to check on the events of that type. So today I'm going to focus on one of the products that our committee worked on with the City Department for the Aging. It's called the Aging in Place Guideline. And so we're going to bring that up, and I'm going to run through some of the highlights and the features of that booklet. That's available to everyone. It is free, and it comes both in the English version that we're going to go through today, as well as the Spanish version and a Chinese version. So I do encourage everyone to download or link to that and read it through. We're only going to be able to cover the highlights. And I also want to mention that, as Senator Krueger said, the type of improvements that can be made to your living conditions, whether you live in an apartment or single family home, these are things that can improve your quality of life at any age. Think about it. Disabilities can occur, temporary disabilities for some, at any age. You might break a leg, you might sprain an ankle. That could be a number of things. And so we like to call these improvements universal design that will indeed help aging in place. So we say, don't wait until it's you have an emergency. Think ahead, think about ways to improve your living conditions. So we're going to bring up our cover for the booklet. There we go. So it's called Aging in Place Guide for Building Owners, but well, and that's because as a renter, you would need to work with the building owner to get these improvements done. So don't let that deter you, because as you will hear in the later part of this talk from other presenters, that there are ways of working with your landlord to get these improvements made as needed. So we're going to just go forward into this guidebook, and take a look at some of the highlights. And if we could go to the next page, please. All right, so I am skipping all the way to page 29, which deals directly with the apartments. And there are certain main things that we want to recommend to you that will help you improve your quality of life. So we start off with slip resistant surfaces. You know, there's half of all hospitalizations from falls are coming from falls in the home. And having slip resistant surfaces are going to go a long way to preventing injuries in the home. We look to avoiding steps, not only at the thresholds, but also on the pathways coming to your home or to your apartment. And so we have recommendations as to keeping those pathways clear and step-free. If you can't avoid all steps, there are ways of introducing grab bars and handrails along that circulation route. And so there are some more specifics in the booklet about that. We also touch upon colors and having contrasting colors. If all of your floor surfaces and wall surfaces are all of one color and there's no contrast, it might be a condition where you cannot see the changes in the transitions of level. So we definitely encourage that anytime there's a level change, that there be a change of color. We talk about ramps. We talk about the width of doors and the types of doors that can be changed out in your home in order to be more accessible. And we talk about how we want to arrange for storage or access to the things that you need with providing shelving at the right height, cabinets at the right height. And so a lot of those details are in the booklet. And even electrical outlets need to be, this gets into something a little more complicated, but still it can be modified. Existing outlets can be moved sometimes without rewiring, but you do need a licensed electrician for that sort of thing. And then, of course, you want to protect yourself with active smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors. Could we go to the next page, please? Now, lighting is very important because if you're walking around at night and you don't have proper lighting, you can very easily injure yourself. So it's good to have not only adequate lighting, but also the night lights or some motion detectors on lights so that you don't have to first find a switch to turn on the lights, but that either there's a very low level of light that's there in the pathway all the time, or the light switch is very obvious and easy to reach. We even give recommendations on one of the pages of our booklet about the type of lighting. We recommend, of course, LED lighting. It comes in various forms of lamps that can be switched out in your regular fixtures. These are much more energy efficient, and we even recommend what type of LED light to get. We want you to get the color temperature less than 3,000 degrees because that's the warmer version of the light. When you get above 3,000, you are in the blue range of light, which people compare with fluorescence. That's more harsh, a little more institutional. The bathroom, of course, is one of those most important rooms because we have water, we have slip possibilities. We have a relatively small space to do a lot of activities. So we'll make sure the slip resistance is there, the door is wide enough for getting in and out easily, grab bars to help stabilize you, and cabinets that are within easy reach. Go on the next page, please. So we go into even more details. Now notice that this is ADA compliant. We're recommending only those items that will meet the ADA law for accessibility. However, even if you do not need to comply with the ADA law, we're still recommending that when you do these accessibility changes for aging in place for you, you just never know what you might need. So if you're going to make a change, follow the guidelines. And we cover that in more detail within the booklet. Next page, please. Bedrooms and kitchen repeat some of the same points. Don't need to go through that again, but note that there's a number of things there. And now let's go to the next page, please. Storage, shelving heights, that sort of thing, accessibility. And then depending on your condition, you might want to have some extra communication devices that we point out. Next page, please. And then we wrap up the booklet with resources page. And this, a lot of these items in the booklet are going to also be covered by the other speakers. But I do want to point out that there's some loan assistance that might be applicable so that, especially if you're dealing with a landlord, there may be ways to help out on the costs. If you're living in New York City, the HPD, the Housing Preservation and Development Department, has a $1 billion budget. Can you imagine $1 billion just for that one department to help create and preserve housing? And it includes some assistance for changes. They have specifications that are similar to the ADA law, which calls out different things that can be done in the home. So we have this available for everyone. Please download it, keep it for yourself and refer to it, and think ahead if you can. I will be available for the question and answer period. So unless there's any questions right now or anything else, I'll pass it on to the next person.
Thank you so much, Brian. And we'll be saving all the questions for the end. As Senator Krueger indicated, I'm taking over MC duties for the rest of the event. I'm Brad Usher, Senator Krueger's Chief of Staff. Next, we will hear from the New York City Department for the Aging team. Please welcome Eileen Malarkey, Laudry Lamadou, and Ignacio Silvestre.
Hi, I'm Eileen Malarkey from the Department from the Aging. Brad, you can see my PowerPoint?
Yep.
Great. Okay. The DIFTA mission is to work to eliminate ageism, ensure the dignity and quality of life of New York City's diverse older adults, and for the support of their caregivers through service, advocacy, and education. Through an array of community services they can help an older adult remain at home for as long as possible. Using these services can also help the caregivers maintain their health while providing or overseeing needed care. This shows the directory of options that we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to pass now to my colleague, Laudrey Lamadou, to talk about the first program, the minor home repair. Laudrey?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Eileen. As was stated before, my name is Laudrey Lamadou, and I am a Senior Director in the Bureau of Community Service here at the Department for the Aging. So as Eileen stated, one of DFTA's mission is to ensure that older adults live at home for as long as possible. And to that end, we provide 2 minor home repair programs through our partners, New York Foundation and Met Council. The minor home repair program provides minor home repairs, non-structural minor home repairs to homeowners who are over the age 60 and up. For the purposes of this program, homeowners are defined as either someone who owns a family home that is a 1 to 4 family home or a co-op or condominium. On a limited basis, we do provide minor home repairs to renters if it is a repair that is not provided by the landlord and with the consent of the landlord. The program has to provide service to individuals who are low to moderate income. In some cases, they may provide services to folks who are over the income guidelines, but at least 51% of the recipients of the program have to be low to moderate income. Next slide. So as I stated, the minor home repair program provides minor repairs that are non-structural. Some examples of this could be safety and security, such as installation of locks, replacement of window panes and repairs to doors, installation of smoke and carbon detectors. Some plumbing that is not structural. These could be the installation of faucets, unclogging of drains and toilet repairs, carpentry, such as securing carpets so that to prevent falls, electrical and heating that are structural, home maintenance repairs such as cleaning of gutters and painting and patching holes in ceilings and walls, weatherization. This also includes installing air conditioning, and lastly, home safety, which is installing handrails and grab bars. Next slide. In addition to the minor home repair program, what we know that one of the leading causes of falls one of the leading causes of injury to older adults is falls that happen in the home. In order to address some of these things, we provide at our senior centers and naturally occurring retirement communities exercise programs and support groups that address the causes of falls. Some of these exercise programs address things like balance, strength, and gait. Examples of these are Tai Chi for arthritis, a matter of balance, which is a combination of exercise and workshops, bingo size, which is a game that incorporates the popular bingo game along with some exercise and education around prevention of falls, Stay Active and Independent for Life, which focuses on exercises that include people with mobility challenges because it has sitting and standing exercises, as well as Walk with Ease, which incorporates walking and gait control. With that, and if you are interested in joining one of our programs, you can contact one of your local senior centers, or if you are a member of a naturally occurring retirement community, you can contact them as well. And with that, I'll pass it over to my colleague, Ignacio Silvestre, to talk about the Assigned Counsel Project.
Good morning, can you see me?
Yep.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Audrey. My name is Ignacio Silvestre. and I'm the director of the Assigned Counsel Project, Social Service Case Assistant at the Department for the Aging. The Assigned Counsel Project is a very unique program because you have legal service providers and social workers working side by side to provide assistance to all the adults that are facing eviction in housing court for any of the following reasons: non-payment of the rent, because of conditions inside the apartment that might present a potential environmental or health hazard. Sometimes landlords will file housing court proceedings because the tenants refuse to allow access. The program also provides legal representations to tenants who file lawsuits against the landlord for failing to provide the necessary repairs in their home. The part that the Department for the Aging plays in the Assigned Counsel Project is very unique. Besides providing short-term crisis intervention, we also make court appearance where we advocate inside the courtroom to make sure that all the adults rights are being protected. If you would like to be referred to the Assigned Counsel Project, you are welcome to call 311 and ask to be referred to the New York City Human Resources Administration's Office of Civil Justice. You could also call Department for the Aging Connect. In many occasions, the court itself, when it's brought to the attention of a judge that the respondent is a senior, an older adult, they will automatically refer the case. If you have any other question, later on, I will be happy to address it. Thank you.
Hi, this is Eileen Malarkey again. I wanted to start by talking about case management. Through case management, clients are assessed to identify strengths and needs, and then help to gain access to appropriate services, benefits, and entitlements needed to age safely at home and maintain their quality of life. On the slide, you can see what the eligibility criteria are, and I'll go through them briefly. 60 years or older, difficulty managing self-care and/or household chores, homebound, meaning difficulty leaving the home, able to be safely maintained at home, not eligible to receive similar case management services, and can participate in care planning with the case manager. Case management is the gatekeeper also for DFTA-funded in-home services, such as home delivered meals, home care, and friendly visiting. Through home delivered meals, clients are provided 7 meals a week, either hot, chilled, or frozen. Through the home care, with the home care program, eligibility is based on client need in terms of household chores, meaning laundry, cleaning, and personal care, for example, bathing, dressing, and client income minus some expenses. So clients may need to share in the cost of the care. That's determined again by the income minus some expenses. And the client cannot have Medicaid. Hours are usually in 4-hour increments and range anywhere from 4 to 20 hours a week. The friendly visiting programs offer weekly visits by a volunteer, groups, and peer-to-peer matches. Volunteers who are matched with an older adult are vetted and trained, and these programs are part of the initiative to reduce feelings of social isolation and loneliness. Friendly visiting really offers older adults an opportunity to develop nurturing, long-lasting friendships with volunteers with whom they can share ideas, mutual interests, and experiences. Friendly visiting is also an enriching experience for volunteers, offering them the opportunity to cultivate a lasting friendship, to learn from an older adult's life experiences, and to benefit from the personal satisfaction derived from community services. As Ignacio mentioned, we're available for questions at the end of this roundtable. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all our participants from the Department of the Aging, Brian, Eileen, Laudrey, Ignacio, and Anna, sorry, I'm moving ahead of myself. Our next presenter will be Anna Martinez from the Human Rights Commission, the New York City Human Rights Commission.
Thank you, Brad, for the introduction. Hi, everybody. My name is Anna Martinez, and I am the Director of Project Equal Access at the New York City Commission on Human Rights. I wanted to give a quick overview of who the Commission is and what we can do to help people stay in their homes. First of all, the New York City Commission on Human Rights is a New York City agency where we are a law enforcement agency protecting people's civil rights. There are several protected classes, and today we're discussing the protected class of disability. The New York City Human Rights Law is our most comprehensive anti-discrimination law. It is one of the broadest in all of the United States. We cover many different protected classes. Specifically today, I'm going to talk a little bit about Project Equal Access and what we do and how we could help. Project Equal Access is a program within our law enforcement bureau where we are a pre-complaint intervention program. That means you're coming to us with issues about accessibility or being discriminated against, and it's all before lawyers. So we're working and negotiating with landlords, with building managements to make sure that accessibility is there for everybody, for people with disabilities, for seniors, for whoever needs it. And Brian mentioned something earlier about accommodations. So what we do is we take in complaints from the public about accessibility issues that they're having within their apartment or within the building. It could be something in terms of a public accommodation, let's say at a store. And it could also be discrimination within employment. So we handle all types of complaints like that. We work with the individual to find out what their needs are. And then we work together in a good faith dialogue with the entity, like a landlord, to see how we can come up with a good way to provide a reasonable accommodation. Now, a reasonable accommodation could be many of the things that Brian had mentioned in terms of physical accessibility, modifications, small structural changes. We work with landlords in terms of housing to make sure that, number one, they're providing these reasonable accommodations if they're requested, and if it's feasible. We follow the ADA guidelines to make sure that that the accommodations are safe and compliant. And we really work together one-on-one, listening to the constituent and working with landlords to make sure that accommodations are put in place that are safe and that provide people with independent access. Our program covers all 5 boroughs, from Staten Island to the Bronx. And currently, if you are needing assistance, there's 2 ways to find us. You can call 311 and ask for the Commission on Human Rights, and if you explain to them what your challenges are, they will route you to Human Rights and the Project Equal Access Program. Or you can call our hotline directly, which is, I think we can put it in the chat. The hotline is 212-416-0197. Along with this information, we're also putting in the chat our Project Equal Access brochures, which have a lot of great information for people who are looking for help in terms of accessibility. We have a fact sheet that has, frequently asked questions, and then we have information specifically showing examples of some reasonable accommodations. And reasonable accommodations, again, really quick, those are accommodations that people are seeking within housing, employment, or public accommodations. And these are, things that people ask for, such as, a ramp in front of the building because there are 3 steps at the entrance, or grab bars in their bathrooms. So there are a wide range of accommodations, and like I said, what we do is we try to work with the constituent to find out what the best and safest way to help them is. We also have a wonderful website with a lot of information that I invite you to take a look at, and you can access that at newyorkcity.gov/human rights. And I will also be available at the end for questions if there are any. And I thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Anna.
Thanks.
We will now move to the Q&A portion of the event. So if all our presenters can make themselves visible and unmute, as I'm sure many of you will want to chime in on these. First, a couple of issues that people ask about. Several of you asked questions about aging in place resources. I am including information about how to get Senator Krueger's Senior Resource Guide, which has numerous resources in aging in place and other vital services for older adults. You can access the guide online. The link will be in the chat, or you can email us at lkrueger@nysenate.gov or call our office at 212-490-9535, and we can mail you a copy of the guide. And obviously, you got a lot of information on aging in place resources here as well. Some of you asked questions about finding affordable housing for older adults. It is important to understand that demand for affordable housing is much greater than the available supply. There are affordable options available, but in all likelihood, you will have to wait several years for your name to move to the top of the wait list. The time to find out about these options is now, or hopefully before you are in a desperate situation. To help you with the search process, the NYC Housing Preservation and Development Agency sponsors the Housing Ambassadors Program. The agency partners with community-based service providers who can help people prepare and apply for Housing Connect affordable housing lotteries. Housing ambassadors can provide information and assistance with the application process. Contact information for 2 of the Housing Ambassador programs are listed in the chat. And just to remind you, we will email you a list of all the resources listed in the chat when we send you the link to today's event video, which will probably be in a day or 2 after the event. Now we will start with a mixture of questions that were sent ahead of time and questions that have come in now. And as a reminder, questions can continue to be submitted through the Q&A functions on Zoom or Facebook. Okay. I think a lot of the questions about resources, I think, have been answered. One question that I think might be, this probably is for Brian, are there ergonomically designed kitchen and bathroom resources for folks?
Well, there are. They would be in the form of different manufacturers that specially design their products for different uses, different types of uses and so forth. But manufacturers do have a category of products that would, I think, fit a lot of different situations. So that would be, since the marketplace changes quite rapidly and it's expanding, so that the range of offerings is constantly growing. But I've certainly seen a lot of products on the market that would address ergonomic issues.
And a question which somebody may or may not be able to answer, but how to find a reputable, dependable, affordable handyman. So I'm someone who can afford one, but I don't know where to find.
Well, I'll start with that one, because we always recommend, no matter who our clients are, no matter who we're talking to about that question, is the best way to find that type of person is to ask around in your building, in your neighborhood, your friends, your whatever your social group is. Find someone who has actually worked with the person on something that's actually physically been done, so you know what the result is. That is the best way to find somebody that you can trust and somebody that you know has done that sort of thing, sort of work, and can do it again for you. So that's always the best way. Check their references even after you get that reference and talk to them. Ask for their references so you can expand your scope of inquiry.
Great. I'm not sure if there's one answer to this, but what is the most affordable way to reconfigure our home to accommodate fragile elderly for fall prevention?
Well, I do want to encourage everybody to follow the guideline in the booklet.
Read the book.
That covers that. Yeah, it does. I mean, you start with the simple things like removing area rugs, the things that can slip or bunch up and cause a trip. Look for other trip hazards. Look for places for grab bars. Those are basics. By the way, for the grab bars, you don't want to do it yourself. You want to make sure that you have somebody that can make sure that there's the proper backing so that it's secure. You don't want to have a grab bar that looks secure and then find out that when you put weight on it, it'll pull out of the wall, because that'll create an even more dangerous fall.
Also, I think for some of the items that Brian mentioned, you can reach out to the minor home repair program because it's free of charge. Well, the handyman is free of charge, but any items that you need for the repairs, you'll have to pay for yourself, but the services are free of charge. So that's one way. And they do install grab bars and things like that.
Great. Okay. I got one question from prior and one that came in together that I think I'm going to combine. Aging seniors, single seniors in co-ops, losing faculties, who is responsible for their welfare? What is the responsibility of the board? And then somebody asked, how do we get co-op services to residents who do not ask for it or resist but are struggling? So these are co-op boards trying to address issues with folks.
Well, for our services, someone who's concerned about an older adult can certainly reach out to Aging Connect, and they can see what the best service is to help. You know, the person they're trying to help does need to agree to the services that we provide, but that's a good starting point.
And also Senator Krueger will be holding an event on aging solo on March 31st, which will be sending out details and might be also have some information that would be relevant to some of this, both for the person who is aging solo, but also perhaps for situations like this board. Most of the resources you mentioned for Medicare people, are they for higher income people? I'm not sure I understand this question, but there were a number of questions about that came in about a mention of moderate income and a mention of low income. What are the qualifying categories for that?
So those are used by the Section 8 guidelines. So if you look up the Section 8 guidelines, but as I said, they have to serve at least 51% of their portfolio has to fall into that category. So they do have room to service people of higher incomes. It's just that the outreach has to be to folks in that category, and they have to serve 51% of their constituents have to be within that category. But there is room for higher income people within the minor home repair program.
That's very helpful. So don't assume you can't get resources because you have a higher income, but the programs themselves have to balance and make sure there's. Okay.
So reach out to them and see.
Yeah, and since this question mentioned Medicare, we're planning, we've got a planning for Medicaid event on March 10th, it says here on my notes. So I guess that's something that will be coming up too. Where can I get a list of assisted housing if I feel like I need that? Does anybody know?
I think you can start with Aging Connect and they could connect you to resources.
Okay,
DICTA has a housing resource guide that talks about the different kinds of housing, 201 housing, 202 housing, that is available to older adults. So as Eileen mentioned, if you reach out to Aging Connects, they can send you that housing resource guide for your borough.
Okay, great. So yeah, we've actually sent that guide to many constituents over the years. So it's a comprehensive list of housing. And again, with the caveat that that doesn't mean you're not going to end up on a waiting list for a while, but there at least it lists everything that's out there. An issue that our office deals with a lot is clutter. So I have some clutter questions for you. Can you address cleaning out tchotchkes, dishes, old books to make room for doing hobbies and or live-in aids? Is there assistance for decluttering?
I don't know of any community-based program that provides such a service free of charge. I do believe there is one of two programs that they will conduct home visits and provide more emotional support to the tenant in the process of trying to declutter. The challenge that we all face is that we become emotionally attached to our possessions, especially if there are things that we accumulated through the years, possessions of loved ones that are no longer around, and we hold to those memories. So the process to detach is extremely challenging. And unfortunately, you know, it's not a short-term solution, but I'm happy to follow up and find out the program. I've dealt with any in the past, and I apologize, I don't have that information about it.
Great, and our office does publish a what to do with all that stuff guide. So you can request that from our office. It has some resources. Unfortunately, some of the resources have changed over the years. So there are things that used to be available that are not. But what Ignacio mentioned about sometimes it also is about the support that people need to figure out what they need and what they don't. And I think that gets into this next question. What if my family wants to change things in my home I don't want to change? Is there any advice for dealing with interfamilial conflicts over what is safe, unsafe? This could be about clutter. It could be about just generally an older adult's ability to live by themselves where they and other family members have differences of opinion.
I would say that the first thing that we need to ask is, does those changes need to be done for safety reason? Have you know, if you're a renter or if you're a shareholder, have you been contacted by your landlord or by your board expressing concern of some conditions inside the apartment? If it's for safety reason, then obviously, you know, diplomacy always prevails and try to find a point to determine what is necessity, what is luxury, right? And it's always to negotiate. It might take a while, but my advice is to start the process slow, not rush and impose, because if you do that, unfortunately, you're going to bump into a wall, and there's not going to be any solution.
Got it. So, and that sounds like advice for the family member.
Caregivers, definitely for
which is
caregivers.
which is important, how to address these issues and in a sensitive way. Okay, moving on to some questions about legal requirements for accessibility, and some of these may have been sort of answered or all answered, but I'll ask them again if they haven't. Do the requirements apply to rentals for seniors also apply to those living in co-op? So I gather this is a question about, can my co-op board be forced to do X, Y, and Z, like install a ramp or something?
So I think I can answer that one for you. If it's a straight rental, absolutely, the landlord is responsible for the accommodation as long as it is reasonable and does not cause undue hardship to the landlord. And undue hardship means just simply that that they're able to show proof or financial information that says that they don't have the capital to put in such an accommodation. Most of the cases that I've worked on, that excuse has not been, that excuse never really works, because we do have the enforcement power to seize financial documents from landlords. So it's hard for them to cry poor, let's say. Now, in terms of co-ops and condos, because those are units that that are shared, meaning people buy into the shares of the co-op or condo, the person who is asking for the accommodation may need to pay some of the cost because they have bought into the co-op or condo. But the accommodation, as long as it's feasible, must be provided. Again, the cases that I work in, if people are having problems dealing with their landlords directly or dealing with their co-op boards or condo boards, that's where Project Equal Access can help. Because what we do is we remind landlords and co-op boards of their obligations to provide reasonable accommodations based on the New York City human rights law, which requires them to provide these reasonable accommodations if they're feasible and possible.
Great. And this is probably a question for you too. The question is about a Mitchell development doing construction that doesn't suit a senior citizen. But generally, if a building is doing construction, do the reasonable, so if they're changing my unit, and am I able to make a reasonable accommodation argument about the way they're doing the construction?
So any renovations, well, let me go back. So New York City, as we all know, buildings are very, very old, and a lot of the landlords or building owners will say, well, my building is grandfathered in, or my building is a landmark building. And that doesn't really exempt anyone from providing a reasonable accommodation. They may have to go through a few more processes on their end to get the approvals for the accommodation. But again, when we're working with constituents and landlords, we typically, go from the idea of, we can make this work. Let's see how we can get it done. Mitchell is a little different. Sometimes Mitchell, I tend to send constituents to HPD to request assistance over there as well. But typically landlords should be making these reasonable accommodations if it's feasible and it's possible, and they should be providing them at their cost.
And I think in this particular case, the question is about construction, which is something we deal with a lot. which is say I'm an older person who removing my bathroom is going to cause me a lot of problems, even if it's a temporary matter. That would be subject to reasonable accommodation too. So if
Sure.
the landlord would have to make an argument that they had to do that,
Yes.
there was no reasonable accommodation, or they would have to make a reasonable accommodation for me.
A reasonable a reasonable accommodation in that example would be that the Mitchellama people or the landlords provide a reasonable accommodation during the duration of the construction. Let's say they have to renovate the bathroom, like you said, Brad. What would happen is they would have to provide a reasonable accommodation in the form of some sort of a temporary housing during the duration of the construction. And it applies to elevator outages as well. Temporary housing could be housing in a nearby hotel for the duration of the construction, or it could be in another unit, a vacant unit. There are ways to get an accommodation made during construction. Absolutely.
And I'm going to keep on the bathrooms because there seem to be a lot of bathroom questions here, and it's sort of combining that one with another one. If a bathroom, say they're making their bathrooms all modern and fancy, but in a way that makes the toilet seats too low for people or something like that, that would also be something that would be a reasonable accommodation, right? So I could say your reconstruction of my bathroom makes it impossible for me to use it, and therefore I can't get in the tub, or I can't get into whatever. You have to do something for me, right?
I mean, I'm gonna ask Brian also to jump in as well. But any construction or any renovations, new renovations or new construction must follow the ADA guidelines. I have had instances where a bathroom is renovated into these beautiful modern looking type bathrooms, where the side of the bathtub, is 24 inches deep, right? So it's very difficult for someone who has a mobility issue to actually enter the bathtub. So yes, these when renovations and constructions happening, they must take into account the ADA. It doesn't always happen, but right, Brian? So we have to gently remind, gently remind people.
Well,
right?
that's right. So what is applied to any remodeling job, reconstruction, of course, the more extensive the remodeling it is, the more strict the code requirement is for modifying for accessibility. And in the case of a single unit, a single dwelling unit, if, for example, in the case of the bathtub, you might have a out of compliance bathtub, but if you have another bathroom with another way of bathing, then that would meet the guidelines. So it's something on a case-by-case basis that you want to be working with an architect or somebody that can guide you on that. But yes, you do need to be following those laws.
And I think I'll move on to some questions on just general services for older adults. Sometimes one question was about help in obtaining case management services, and I think Department for the Aging gave some good resources on that. Someone requires help in the form of a coordinator advocate for a short time when Medicare won't cover such services. Can you get that kind of help when funds are limited, other than hiring someone privately? Would that be something that fits in those buckets for Department for the Aging?
It may be. So the central place that we've mentioned a couple of times, the Aging Connect, what they do is they listen to what the concerns are, gather some info, and then connect a client to the resource that can help them the most. And it could be our resources, or it could be a resource in the community.
And if a person needs assistance on home, either in a home for a short-term or long-term basis, what organizations, public or private, are recommended as source for competent or trustworthy home care aides? Is that something that the same entity can advise with, or?
They could, because the client may be eligible, like I had mentioned, our home care program, they may be eligible for that, or they may need to be connected to another resource, and they know of resources in that particular community.
Okay. And last question about, is there, in case of emergency, list of information that should be filled out and available to EMS, police, or family in case of incapacitation or hospitalization, where to keep it? I'm going to start to answer that because we've had some other events on this. The back of your front door is a good idea because it's easy to find for anybody. And we've had events on living wills, healthcare proxies, and other things which are available on the center's website. I think our last event was that one. So you can watch and learn a lot more about that, but anybody who wants to chime in on that question, feel free. Okay, I'll move on to some questions that have come in today, and a lot of these are more specific, but they may be good examples to deal with other questions. Would a tenant be charged for any of these improvements changes? For instance, a one-time charge or a long-term increase in rent?
I think I can answer that one. No, the tenant should not. If it's a straight rental, the tenant should not be charged for the accommodation. The accommodation should be provided by the landlord straight out. There should be no upcharges in rent. And that is something that that Project Equal Access has helped with as well.
Okay, and this next question is a detailed question about an ongoing, it sounds like an ongoing inability to get a landlord to address the fact that my rent stabilized building in Elmhurst, Queens has a step up. Neighbor now deceased, was years with a walker, wheelchair, but they've not made accommodations. Assuming there's still somebody who's living in the building eligible for accommodations, apparently the management has been difficult to deal with and not willing to help. I'm gathering they should call the Human Rights Commission. Is that a correct
That's right.
answer?
That is that is correct.
Okay.
They should reach out on the hotline, and one of our representatives will take all the information and do a quick intake, and then route that complaint or case over to Project Equal Access. The one thing that I do like to advise is if that person is the person that requires the accommodation, put a letter together or speak to the landlord via email or phone or something. Ask for the accommodation before coming to the Commission on Human Rights, so that that there is, so that the landlord knows that an accommodation is needed. For instance, this particular person who was looking for the ramp, you said is no longer there. Maybe the landlord, and it sounds like the landlord could be, a little sketchy, but if the landlord is refused then and still hasn't done it because that person is no longer there living in that building, he may think, or she may think that they're not obligated to do it. So what I do is I tell complainants, constituents, ask for the accommodation. If you don't get an answer from the landlord, or if you don't, or if he or she flat out rejects the accommodation, then come to the commission. We'll do an investigation through Project Equal Access. We'll do a site visit to make sure a ramp, for example, is feasible and it's possible. And then we can go from there.
Okay, and this might be a question that gets to the issue of reasonable accommodation. It's about bathroom doors, and it says swinging out. What if the structure of the building with standpipes for water and electricity around doors prevent pocket sliding doors or the door to swing out. So I'm gathering this is a structural issue of the building where an accommodation that somebody might want may not be feasible. And how would one address that as a reasonable accommodation? Is that the kind of thing that probably they're not going to have to do, or?
And I'm gonna point towards Brian again. If it's feasible and it follows the ADA guidelines, then that is what we are advocating for when you come to Project Equal Access. Feasible and possible is always, it depends if it can be done. Pocket doors, there's a lot of, and Brian, again, please chime in, but there's a lot involved within the actual structure.
No, that's right. I would say, just generally speaking, that almost always there is a feasible way to increase the door size and to change the swing of the door. That's not the hardest part. It may mean moving the light switch over to make room for the larger door. But even that's very feasible. So pocket doors, as Anna said, that's harder to do. You need a pocket, a wall that can accommodate the pocket, and that pocket, usually there's no room for electric light switch too. So you get into those problems. It's easier to just look for a way to make it a swing door. But again, technical expertise is you want to have your contractor look at the wall. You want to have an architect help you out on that. So, but my experience is that there's almost always a way.
And if I'm a rent regulator, the next question has to do about moving a temperature control that is way too low for the resident to get access to it. I'm a rent regulated tenant. I can't hire an architect. Is that something that, what do I do? I can't tell. The landlord says no. Does human rights help negotiate that? Is that?
So if it's a matter of, say again, Brad, it's
the last one. The new one is the temperature controls for the mother's radiator are located 2 inches from the floor in the apartment. I assume it's probably one of those knob things, and she can't get down there.
So yes, so that would be a reasonable accommodation to ask that the temperature control be within ADA guidelines and be placed at a certain level. We'd have to, yeah, it's feasible. We'd have to take a look at it, and work with the landlord to see how we could make it better for that constituent.
And a question about Department of Aging, do they provide an aid to accompany a 99-year-old senior to doctor's appointments? We have some of these kind of resources in our senior resource guide, but Department for Aging might have ideas as well.
In certain naturally occurring retirement communities, they do provide what is called escort services. I also, in some older adult centers, that is a service that they may offer, but you might have to call and see, call your local senior center, or if you live in a naturally occurring retirement community, contact them and see if that's a service that they provide.
And also, there is a section on transportation in our senior resource guide, which might have some additional resources. Now I'm moving on to a whole bunch of questions that have come in just since I started doing questions. So we'll try to work through these. How to apply for home delivered meals?
That's through your local case management agency. So the best thing to do is call Aging Connect, and they'll connect you to the right program.
And it sounds like for many questions, if you don't know what to do, call Aging Connect. And if they can't help you, call our office, and maybe we will have other ideas, but it does sound like Aging Connect is the right. What system do you recommend? And I'll put, if you can recommend, that's my added editorial, for seniors who fall or hurt themselves and can't get to a phone for help. So gathering this is the, the little devices that people wear or something like that. Is that? I'm gathering one can't make a recommendation on that, but.
I mean, we do have older adults that use personal emergency response systems because of the concern that you're raising. There's not a particular vendor we can recommend, but that is a strategy. I don't know if anyone else on the call has other ideas.
And I'd also swing this one back and say, as Brian was pointing out earlier, prevention is the best measure. So you may still want to have one of these devices, but you also want to be making sure that your apartment doesn't have slippery floors, has the kinds of guidelines that will make it less likely that you'll fall in the first place. So yes, can't recommend one of those, but also be thinking about ways to make it less likely that you'll fall. Okay. I'm looking for questions that I think you folks can answer. What are some ways you can make your home age-friendly for someone living with dementia? Are there specific things that, Brian, this is probably for you, recommendations specifically around dementia?
I noticed that before, and we've had discussions in our DFA committee about dementia, living with dementia. It is really, really too complex to even begin to address. So I would rather direct it to one of maybe a DFTA where they would help people with that particular issue, because there's just it's just too much otherwise.
So we have caregiver programs where they're really for the caregiver in terms of questions for people about the care recipient. So I know I'm a broken record, but through Aging Connect, they can connect you to the local caregiver program, and they would be the best resource to give you some advice and hear more particulars about your concerns.
I think I know the answer to the next question, but I'll let Anna give it. Is there an income limit to get help from the New York City Commission on Human Rights?
No, there is no income limit. If you are requiring help and you think you have been discriminated, call 311 or call the hotline. There's no income limit at all.
Okay. And the next question has to do with organizations offering free installation of bathroom grab bars. The handyman one will do the installation. You'll still have to buy the grab bar. But if your landlord is, if it's a reasonable accommodation in your apartment, your landlord may have to pay for it. That would be true if I'm a co-op shareholder too, correct, Anna?
It is, but with the co-op and condo, there may be some costs that have to be shared.
Okay, got it. Because you're an owner as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Are telephones in bedrooms examples of extra communication devices? I think I missed the reference to extra communication devices. And I think that this person also asked about low and medium income, but I think that if there are income guidelines that we can share with folks for different programs, we can add that to some of the documents we send out afterwards. Can you repeat the name of the organization for free repair?
There are two organizations and they are both borough-wide. It's New York Foundation and Met Council. And their information, I believe, is in the links.
Okay, so the links have New York Foundation and Met Council for that.
Yes, they have their phone numbers.
I am living in a small walk-up building and have lung issues causing shortness of breath and arthritis, so difficult to climb up and down 3 flights of stairs. Is there a reasonable accommodation I could request of my landlord? And there are other questions about what do you do in a walk-up? I guess it's a more general question.
So is that for me? Okay. So yes, there is a reasonable accommodation. One would be if it's feasible and it's possible to get a chairlift or a stair lift. Some of these older walk-up buildings, the stairwells are very narrow, so it's not possible. If it's not possible, then the next reasonable accommodation that we would work with or ask the landlord to work with us on would be a transfer, meaning a transfer out of that building to a more accessible building or a transfer to a lower floor if there's availability.
A question that I think I know the answer to, which is not for you. Any information about fourth vaccine for elderly? My understanding is that a fourth vaccine is now being recommended for immunocompromised adults and teens, but that has not been recommended by the CDC yet for all elderly. And if anybody wants to correct me on that, let me know, but I'm pretty sure that's the right answer. Okay. All right. A good friend of our office says that his experience with AIA members assisting as an AIA member assisting aging New Yorkers in small flats has been more akin to hand-to-hand combat with landlords and malevolent co-op boards who are delighted to make it difficult for people to stay put in their apartments. The adaptations that could be managed were often also discovery trips, since what would be a simple ADA changes reveal often underinvested building infrastructure that beget unexpected delays and dust in apartment in question. I think that's more of a comment than a question, but if anybody wants to speak to the complications of dealing with landlords who may not have maintained their buildings, but I think that is absolutely a universal problem we face in dealing with building owners sometimes.
Hand-to-hand combat is fantastic. That is such a great description. And if you're experiencing that, please call the commission. They'll route you to Project Equal Access, and we are
You're ready for
it. We're ready to assist.
Great. A question about a fall prevention program in the Upper East Side area. Is that something that DFTA knows anything about plans for such things? Or
So all of our older adult senior centers offer some sort of falls prevention program that I mentioned, but they offer them at various times. So again, call Aging Connects about what is a local senior center near you, and then call that center and see if they are offering it and when they're offering it. So that is my best advice.
Okay, great. And for this constituent, the closest one is probably going to be Lenox Hill Senior Center at Lenox Hill Neighborhood House is my guess.
And call them and see if they're offering one anytime soon.
But then a question about senior centers. Senior centers closed during the last 2 years and currently are offering limited live services. Why are in-person services not considered essential? That's the question, but I'll also add, is what's going on with the sort of a return to full service senior centers, if that's something that anybody has answers to?
Senior centers were fully operational, even though they were not live. We were doing virtual programming and providing one-on-one services. Senior centers are currently open on a limited basis, and we continue to work with them to open full-time, but senior centers are open. It's just that the capacities are limited, but they are open.
And somebody's asking us to send them the what to do with all that stuff guide. If you can either email our office at lkrueger@nysenate.gov or call us at 212-490-9535 and give us your address, we'll send you the guide. Okay. is there help for various tech issues in the home, like sound bar that doesn't connect? That is a hearing issue, computer issue. So somebody, I gather, with computer adaptive technology that they're having trouble with. I would refer people to Senior Planet, though DFTA might have other things, but Senior Planet offers a lot of technical support for seniors. I'll maybe ask Wendy to include in the stuff we send out some information on Senior Planet. We did an event with them a while back on some senior tech issues, when maybe we can include a link to that, or you can find it on our website. Okay. Okay. Somebody with, if you've got a problem with that is some that with with repairs that are not necessarily related to an issue with disability or accommodation, call our office and we can often help negotiate with the landlord. You should also have filed a complaint with 311 just so it's on record, and we can often help with those kinds of things. Okay, somebody asking about fall prevention. I think we've answered that. See your local senior centers. How do we obtain a last will and testament? You mentioned last webinar. Yes, we've got a series of webinars. They are all available on krueger.nysenate.gov, and one of them was on recent, or it was on living wills and healthcare proxies and other such documents. Okay, how does one access Aging Connect?
We have the contact
Chat.
info that I think you're going to share.
So
Correct.
so we've already posted that in the chat, and we will be sending it to all participants. So if you didn't receive it already, it's going to be sent to you. And if you visit DFTA's website, you will also find it there, I'm quite sure. Okay. Okay, and lots of questions about Aging Connect again. Okay, I think that's about most of the questions, and we happen to be approaching the end. So I want to thank you again, Brian, Eileen, Laudrey, Ignacio, and Anna. Our next senior roundtable session will be held on March 10th and will focus on long-term care, which is extremely expensive. The presentation will cover Medicaid eligibility rules for home care and nursing home care, what it covers, and planning strategies available to protect and preserve assets and income. Thank you all again for joining us today.